Welcome to How We Made That App, where we explore the stories behind the most impactful apps shaping industries today. I'm your host, Madhukar Kumar, Chief Marketing Officer at SingleStore. Today, we are joined by one of the original creators of Amazon Alexa, Igor Jablokov, who is the CEO of Pryon and a pioneer in AI and voice technology. Ego's work in speech recognition has transformed the way we interact with technology today, and we are really excited to hear about his journey and insights. Whether you're an entrepreneur, a developer, or just curious about tech innovations, you're in the right place. Hi, Igor, and thank you for joining and welcome to this show. As we were just talking about this right before this, we crossed paths last year at the World Economic Forum at Davos. And something you said that kind of stuck with me. We were talking about, Alexa, which was kind of the OG for all conversational interfaces. It's still not powered by large language model. And you said something that kind of opened my eyes, but I want you to answer that for the audience. And that would be a good beginning of how you got introduced into AI and what you have been doing for years and years before we get to today.
Yeah, thanks for hosting me today. Um, so I used to lead the AI team at IBM, where we essentially discovered the baby version of Watson. This was in the 2002 timeframe and onwards as part of the multimodal research team. And so I departed and picked off some of our top scientists and engineers at the time as well and stood up our last startup. A year into it, we were selected to present at the first ever TechCrunch Disrupt conference. For some of you that are not familiar with that conference, it was lampooned in HBO's comedy Silicon Valley. That's where they did their presentation as well. And I walked down on stage and I pulled out this Razor flip phone and I spoke into it. It talked. And crickets. Nobody in the audience knew what they were seeing at that time. And Andreessen was sitting right in front of us, so on and so forth. And what they did not know at the time is that we were secretly working with Apple on Siri before the iPhone even came out as well. So that's how early we were working on these style of technologies. And then, as you already hinted, 5 years after that event, we were acquired on the download by Amazon, and that's how Alexa was born. So Alexa is my older sister's name, which is a complete coincidence. But the code name for it was Pryon that we ended up reusing it here. So yeah, we've had quite a journey, and essentially I've been doing the same thing, over the course of the last, 10, 20 plus years, thinking about the next generation of AI assistants.
So, one thing, Igor, I wanted to just linger on a little bit. It's a small digress, but we'll come back to the original question. The name Pryon, does it have any meaning, or is there any context to it on why you chose it?
Yeah, there's actually at least three different reasons. One is our head of ML Ops. His first name was Ryan. So head of ML Ops is very important, obviously, to an R&D team as well. So it was a tip of the hat to him. The second reason was the prion protein, spelled Prion, causes mad cow disease. We are spelled Pryon. But if you think about machine learning, it eats its own output. So the ways that those prion diseases happen is because in the case of mad cow disease, the cows are eating pieces of dead cows, which is unfortunate. And the third reason is because of its similarity to the word Cylon. Cylons were the antagonists in the sci-fi Battlestar Galactica, and what most people don't know is there's a lot of Mormon mythology in that show. We had a lot of Mormons working for us in our research team as well, so that was also a tip of the hat to them as well. So there was three different influences for that code name that was never supposed to be uttered outside of our organization, but here we are.
Yeah, I always find it very fascinating to understand where did the name come from because It tells a lot about the thinking that goes behind it and, the attention to detail and so on. But let's get back to Alexa. So, first question, would it be safe to assume that you are the creator and the inventor of Alexa, you along with the rest of the team?
I would say we were Amazon's first AI related acquisition.
I
So it
see.
certainly was the trigger point in their book of Genesis, in their journey of AI. They had practically nobody working AI at the time that we were acquired in 2011. So it certainly is the trigger point. But we were a relatively small company, approximately 50 people at the time as well. And since that time, they claim that they had 10,000 plus people working on it. So in some cases, you have to see startups as special forces, soldiers that can immediately take ground quick, but at times it takes big tech in order to get things to scale and hold the ground, which they did quite well.
And your team was primarily responsible for the conversational user interface and building models to understand NLP and respond to that. Is that correct?
Correct. Yep. Yep. The speech engine. We were working on certain capabilities like a unified acoustic model to support all languages simultaneously. We were working on an end-to-end system that allowed both speech recognition, machine translation, and speech output to be part of a unified pipeline. We were working on streaming data so that it was started understanding you the minute that you started uttering something as well, because there was always a stopwatch association that you needed to get the response back in less than 1 second in order for people to feel like they're having a conversational interaction with an entity.
And what's really amazing is this is pre Gen AI, pre Chat GPT,
Pre
and
GPU.
pre GPU as well. So this is pretty impressive. Now, given that Alexa or those devices are now, what, in over 100 million homes, I think maybe more than that, why do you think, and this was your answer to me, but why do you think it still doesn't have a large language model associated with it and it's still using the older machine learning models to respond?
Well, I mean, there's two dominant reasons. One is just the immense cost of Gen AI, right? So as I just hinted in my previous answer, you're able to run Alexa off CPUs. I mean, it was able to run off x86 inference as well, which obviously drives the costs down. So switching over to a Gen AI mode, is going to be a lot more expensive from the standpoint of compute at scale. As you said, these devices are, in the 100 million range, if not hundreds of millions of devices, if not a billion of these devices eventually at scale. So that's the first thing is just the massive costs associated with it. The second dominant reason is the fact that Gen AI is not as deterministic, right? With Alexa as it currently is, you have fine-tuned entity intent models. Because think about how frustrating it is to all of you that ask it to turn on light bulbs, open the garage door and things of that sort. And if it doesn't do right away, users' expectations are they become more wary of the experience as well. So I think in the early incarnations of these Gen I powered things, even the ones the release that's upcoming here shortly, they're having issues with home control features as an example as well, because it doesn't always do what it needs to do.
Yeah, actually, that's one of the big things I also wanted to get your views on today as well, in terms of, where this is headed with function calling. But I think one of the key things that you talked about, which kind of hits home, is the use of GPUs versus
Mhm.
CPUs. And the second thing, of course, is right now all the compute is happening remotely in the cloud. Now, there are smaller models that are being developed, and in fact, even Apple has tried to run this on device
Mhm.
as well. Given your experience with this for several years now, what do you think about running models on device? Do you think the models are miniaturized enough that they can start running on consumers' computing versus the cloud, which is where all the cost is today?
Yeah, and well, and I think Apple, Amazon, Google. I mean, they all have aspirations towards that and already have early examples. On mobile devices and in these home devices, it was about latency. It literally was about latency to essentially have smaller models that can tackle certain things, especially the home control aspects as well. And then where SLMs are also going to shine, obviously they become a lot more private because you have no cloud processing. And of course, third, for the hyperscalers, it's why do on cloud, which costs them money when they can push it off to the edge because the device is already there doing their thing as well. So this whole hybrid, model of doing as much on the edge as possible, allows them to lower costs. It's increased privacy, reduces latency. It's a win-win for everybody. But then, as you well know, this is why you need certain advancements on the local processing to be able to do that as well. I think it was only certain, product lines or model years of the Amazon Echo devices that were able to support, some of local recognition because they needed to have a coprocessor to be able to support it there.
Yeah, which so one of those things that you mentioned is the latency, and that's
Uh-huh.
where I feel a lot of the products that came right after Gen AI was introduced, Humane Pin as well as
Mhm.
Rabbit, they didn't do very well with two things that you mentioned. One is deterministic response or accurate response, and then the second one is latency. Like if I'm talking to something, and of course now with ChatGPT things and the real-time API, things have moved quite a bit. But especially if I'm retrieving data, then it becomes kind of pointless if it takes 5 or 6 seconds for the application to respond. And your team had kind of solved this with machine learning models. What were some of the learnings? You talked about streaming data, like taking the voice, turning into streaming and start processing while a person is talking. But what about scale? What were some of the early learnings around building an application around this?
And that's what makes all this stuff very tricky, right? A lot of folks think that they can just go to Hugging Face, download open source models, and they're off to the races. I remember a lot of folks critiquing me at the time because they said, "Why is your team building a proprietary speech engine when you can just go to Carnegie Mellon's website, download the Sphinx engine that was available at the time as well, and be off to the races?" And I said, look, even us as an independent company, as a startup, we had almost 50 million users on our platform. You can't do that on open source. If you think about the four legs of the stool that I think you already hit on in different ways, but I'll essentially summarize it, are you have to be able to do four things simultaneously: accuracy, scale, security, and speed. That's it. All four of those things, need to find balance in these solutions as well. And so it came from Bezos, essentially demanding a sub-second response time. And so that meant, fundamental re-architecting of the solution as well, because our platform, when we were an independent company, did not need to have, sub-second latency, in order to work, because we were doing a lot of call mining and voicemail text processing. And so what we were doing is factoring what was called an RT, or a real-time factor as well. When we started on our journey, we were probably at 3 RT, which means a 30-second voicemail would take a minute and a half in order to be converted into text using CPUs. Of course, it was Xeon processors, Intel Xeon processors we were using at the time as well. But slowly but surely, in year 2, year 3, year 4, year 5, we were able to shrink that down to 1 RT or less. Meaning, if you recorded 30 minutes of audio, we were able to start getting it done in 30 seconds, and then 25 seconds, and then 20 seconds, and then half RT, which was 15 seconds in order to do that as well. But then that's where we started developing work in streaming data. It's like, well, if it takes 15 seconds, can I start working on it while they're talking? Right? So think about it. And so that's where on the output, it appears like it only took a second. But in reality, we started doing the work already. So it's really that form of optimization down to the wire.
And of course, you also have to factor in for errors as well as the fact that somebody says something and then maybe they want to scrap what they just said and start over and have to figure that out as well. So, in terms of that, was the algorithm at that time still about predicting the next token, or the ML models were looking at this from a completely different point of view?
No, it was definitely doing those predictions because we were able to start collecting a larger data set than even we expected as we had so many users on the platform. We were able to go from bigrams to trigrams to quadgrams. And essentially what that means in language modelings is instead of having sequencings of 2 words or 3 words or four, it got to 4 words. So think about 2 words that belong together. I love, right? So that would be, a bigram. Now you can have a trigram. I love, um, banana, right? So that's trigram, and then the quadgram would be I love banana pudding, right? And so if you're able to have more of those things together, now it took a lot more memory and a lot more compute to get to quadgrams that give you higher accuracy. As you were able to chunk these things together and have more of those style of patterns as well. Obviously, meaning you have a lot more combinations inside of the language model then instead of the smaller Lego bricks. So think about it this way: you can build lots of things with small Lego bricks, and so it keeps things easier in terms of the production. But you can build more exotic things if you have more varieties of Lego bricks.
Makes sense. And in terms of moving over to the data side of things, was it similar? So you mentioned chunking, which is also very similar to retrieval augmented
Oh,
generation, where you take unstructured data, turn it to vectors. But were you doing something similar with turning the text into vectors and then doing some sort of semantic search around it, or was it a completely different methodology?
no, it was actually similar. We were one of the first commercial incarnations of neural network style technologies as well. We had an internal structure. We called them lattices. A lot of times, we were cloud based. We were the first AI cloud company, but we didn't call it that. We called it hosted, speech recognition or client server based speech recognition. A lot of times, we had certainly in this company we had generative technologies, 7 years ago, but we call them adaptive, not non-generative because people hadn't coined that word yet as well. But what we called lattices, you would eventually understand them as vectors uh, and neural network based computing. Yeah.
So, given your experience and your view of how ML and AI has progressed, do you think there is still a future where a lot of companies would be building their own custom ML based models, or do you think a lot more would move towards taking a Gen AI transformer model and then fine tuning those?
Yeah, it depends on the application in some ways. I know at Pryon we offer our clients several different forms of packaging so they can choose to consume our work as public cloud, private cloud, or on premises. Um, but we construct our own because we do care about achieving top marks on accuracy, but also with the lowest energy use as well, so that we can be up and to the right. GPT is up and to the left, meaning it achieves high accuracy, but with much more compute, for the same unit of work as well, and then everybody else kind of falls under that as well. But always felt like we needed to be up and to the right on maximizing accuracy while at the same time minimizing how much compute was done, meaning we can drive a lot more tokens through our platform node as well. The reason for doing that is, again, go back to my 4 legs of the stool: accuracy, scale, right? I need to be able to ingest, eventually billions of objects and, if not trillions of objects at scale. The only way you can do that is to be 100x, more compute efficient. over time. Now, the reason why my team's able to pull some of that off is, again, we have a lot of, legacy ML engineers and AI scientists that have been building these style of systems before GPUs existed. So it was already in our DNA to essentially develop this stuff to be very compute efficient because we had no choice, when we were building these things, 10 plus years ago, 15, 20 years ago.
And this is a good segue into Pryon, the new incarnation of Pryon, which is your latest endeavor and what you founded. When was this company founded? When
It was
did you?
Yeah, it was 2017 when I realized that there wasn't a strong solution in enterprise AI at that time. I know it's hard for people to fathom because they see so much noise, nowadays in enterprise AI, from big tech to mid-market companies to startups. But there was almost nobody doing enterprise AI, 7, 8 years ago as well. And so when I stood up the company, I said, look, that Alexa style experience is going to come to work. And a lot of people were laughing, at me. And I'm like, don't laugh at natural language. It's the ultimate API. All of you know how to talk to one another before you learn how to read and write. And yet the counter was no, enterprises and government agencies have form-based interfaces. They use SAP, ServiceNow, Salesforce. They use things like DocuSign, so on and so forth. It's not going to be natural language. That's a toy for people's iPhones and for people's kitchens, with Amazon Echoes and the like as well. And so they were snickering like Beavis and Butthead in some ways. But 2+ years ago when ChatGPT came out, everybody, had an epiphany that it would work. Now, in order for it to work, it can't just be a QA system. It also has to be able to deal with the realities of an enterprise environment, meaning it needs integration and connectors and access controls. It requires the fusion between structured, semi-structured, and unstructured content as well, form-based databases, systems of records that may just have raw documents in there. And it's not just documents, it's audio, video, image, text, PowerPoints, PDFs, Word files, web pages, figuring out how to dedupe the content because it's very messy, in there as well. When you look at a modern enterprise with 100,000, 200,000, 300,000 employees, we can barely keep up with our personal, storage pools that have a union of, iCloud and Google Drive and OneDrive and things of that sort. Imagine that at scale, multiplied by, 300,000 individuals. And imagine them, having to work in regulated environments, and imagine the myriad of languages if they're multinational, and then the different laws that they have to conform to. It just becomes a nightmare problem for them. But I foresaw, something interesting, which is instead of thinking these things as one-off solutions, there would eventually be AI sprawl, that there needed to be the development of what I call a knowledge cloud, meaning something that lived on top of systems of records that's able to fuse all of these things together in a neutralized representation. And I also knew that, if you show up at an enterprise, you can't disrupt their existing systems of record. There's a reason why they have them. You just needed to be able to operate with what they already had. They were not going to sunset it just to get to, better interaction modes.
So from Pryon's perspective, from what I understand, it is one of the original, even though if it was not named RAG or retrieval augmented generation platforms. But the way I understand is there are three components of it. One is to extract the content and store it in a way where you can run searches against it. The second one is the retriever, and the third one is generative. In terms of the first portion, what I saw is it's all about unstructured data. Like you said, I can go pull out the PDFs and read it like a human and convert it into something that the models can understand. In your experience, now that you've been working with enterprises for quite a long time, how much of their content is structured versus unstructured?
Yeah, it's hard to predict, and actually, I would add a fourth component as well. So you're exactly right. There's the ingest, there's the retrieval, the generative layer, and then and then also an agentic layer that can do workflows as well. So those are the four main pieces under the architecture. They each obviously perform different ways, and we also modularized it as well, meaning we have vertically integrated the whole stack because by matching model and signaling, that leads to the highest possible accuracy, high security, and things of that sort as well. But we were also realists that a typical, enterprise has their own data science team and things of that sort that may want to do, build line of business applications or have certain specialized things that they wanted to do as well, where they would want 3 out of 4, 2 out of 4, or 1 out of 4 components as well. Maybe they want to create their own models, so they would just use the ingest to get, chunks and embeddings out of it as well, so that they can fine tune or build their own models as well. So we really wanted to meet them in terms of where they were in their journey as well. And there's also a user experience that we developed that existed out of the box as well, but also it's all API driven, so they can hide it behind the scenes of it. Anything that is branded that they wanted to operate as well too. So I think the modular nature was important, but also preserving the end-to-end nature as well, so that they had an easy button if they wanted, especially in the mid-market where they would be more thinly funded in terms of an enterprise team. But I will tell you what the number one competitor is. It's the fact that they have been seeking to build their own models from scratch. And then ultimately, as they created those pilots, because think about this way, the boards were reading all sorts of stuff in Wall Street Journal or hearing it on Davos stages and things of that sort, and they said, oh my gosh, we need AI. And then it rolled down to the C-suite, which rolled down to the folks with technical acumen in these organizations, and they essentially constructed these things for themselves. The problem is they built a paper airplane. They did not build an Airbus. They can only, if they're really sharp, they're able to hit 3 out of 4 conditions: accuracy, scale, security, and speed. They cannot do all 4. I mean, only a company that's 100% focused on doing such things is going to be able to find all 4 of them. And so now what we're seeing on the other side of the introduction of Gen AI is they're starting to rotate towards suppliers like you and I in some ways, like, hey, we need the real stuff, and you guys are focused. And this is what I have seen over the course of the last 24 months is Act 1 post ChatGPT is everybody was trying to figure out what this technology meant. Everybody was dazed and confused, trying to figure out what it meant to their industry, what it meant to their portfolio, what it meant to their organization as well. That was 12 months of loss. Everybody's fact finding, trying to figure out what it meant. And in the second year, they all panicked and tried to construct these things for themselves. And now we're in Act 3, where they figured out what they were able to do. They got the pat on the head, from the standpoint of their early pilots and prototypes to kind of figure out how it could support a line of business, workflow. And now they're figuring out what tools are real out there by different vendors, small, medium, and large.
Yeah, I love your 4 pillars, which is accuracy, speed, scale, and security. And in many ways, to me, it reminds me of the 3-body problem. In this case, it's the 4-body problem, because accuracy affects speed and scale affects speed, and speed affects scale. And then, of course, there's the security, which affects all 3 of it. So it's a very interesting problem that not everybody has solved. But one thing that when I talk to enterprises, that I kind of always try to understand is what part of your data is structured versus unstructured that you're trying to use for AI. And I get a very variable answer. Like there are some companies, and especially I think in legal as well as healthcare, as well as in maybe real estate, there's a lot more unstructured data because they're still used to PDFs and writing and so on. But there's a certain, especially in tech, larger companies, where a lot of data is structured. It's sitting in SQL databases. It's sitting in maybe a JSON, or it's sitting in a large data lake. So from Pryon's perspective, how do you view that to contextualize for generative models later on? Or do you entirely focus on unstructured data only?
Our digital intelligence strategy foresaw that there would have to be fusion, orchestration, and unification of structured, semi-structured, and unstructured knowledge as well. So we've been working towards that as well. So think in Gen AI terms, you need LLM learners and LLM solvers. And LLM solvers would include things like NL to math functions, NL to API calls, NL to Sparkle calls, NL to SQL calls. So all of those needed to exist as tools that would be put into practice by the orchestrator, as it needed to do multi-hop reasoning in order to get an answer. Think about what I need to do to answer a simple query prompt. That's very simple for a human, to enunciate, but very, very tricky to answer. How many ice cream cones did we sell when it was 73 degrees out? That's what I just said. Now, what's the context? Am I the CEO of Baskin Robbins or a store manager? Do you literally mean ice cream, or do you want me to include the sorbets? For what time period? All right, do you have a license to the weather data, or do I need to go and figure out how to get that for you as well? Do you mean all 73 degrees? I presume during the store's operating hours, of course. Do you even have the authority for me to give you this answer as well? How fast do you need this answer? To your point, where accuracy and time, are individual. Do I need to go find somebody else to ask a question because there's a blank that there is no systems of record that can actually give me that information as well? So this thing that was very, very simple for me to say is actually very, very difficult for an orchestrator to figure out, but they do need a union of structured and unstructured processing to be able to solve it.
And does your company also work with the structured part of the data as well? Like, are there
Yep.
connectors into different databases too?
Yeah, we're already starting to work into that as well, and to unify, what I typically joke as crossing the Ghostbuster stream of structured and unstructured, and essentially creating a RAG workflow of essentially pulling these things together so they can sequence that. In fact, before coming on your show here, I was talking to an entity in financial services, and that's exactly where they were getting to. So I think if you think about the crawl, walk, run of generative AI introduction in these organizations, Act One, the crawl phase is typically help me do search discovery operations. That's the first step. And then the second step is help me, do searches and then do trigger workflows. That's the second step. And then the third step is once you help me figure out searches and workflows, do a number of automations. No,
That's what
that's not
agentic.
triggered by anybody. Just do something automatically for me as well. And that's essentially the crawl, walk, run that I've seen in AI adoption.
Yeah, that's kind of what I was thinking about too. But the very, I would say, complex problem that I've seen, so given that we are in the database business, there are companies with massive amounts of data, petabyte scale data
Weaver?
sitting inside of data lakes, lake houses,
Mhm.
warehouses, and then, SQL databases and such. So exactly the problem that you stated is tell me what was the sales in my last quarter. And
Mhm.
your quarter as a company could mean something completely different. Your
Mhm.
definition of sales could be completely different. Is it ACV? Is it just revenue? Is it ARR? And so on. So, one of the things that I've been following is the text to SQL kind of
Mhm.
progression. And now there are specific models just for that.
Mhm.
And even those are never going to replicate those 17 pages long SQL that somebody in the company has written because they have all the context. But I also feel maybe that is also because the text to SQL has been going about this in the wrong way, in the sense we are trying to treat this as a one shot prompt versus actually a few shot prompt, where you say, this is what I want, then the model goes and extracts some data and then say, is this where you're looking to get the data from? And then you do something else. So it's more of a interaction versus a single shot NLP to SQL. And that's where I think the agents come into play. But before I get into that, I wanted to hear your take on how you are thinking about solving retrieval of structured data, but with those same four principles. I think accuracy in this case is even more important, and then speed and scale, and then security.
Yeah, you're exactly right. So you got to give them what they want, right? So try to deal with it as a one shot thing, but also be ready for follow up questions. Which is why in my example I talked about, what's your authorities? Do you have the data? Do did you loosely mean ice cream or do you mean the sorbet? So it's having a sequence of follow up questions as well. And as because think about it, even if that business leader went to an analyst, and blurted that sentence out, what would that analyst do? Immediately have follow up questions to essentially focus in on the specifics in terms of what the report, needed to be as well. That's how you do develop a 17-page, SQL query is because somebody, obviously became a subject matter expert in a particular area and went and talked to other folks in the organization in order to tighten it down, to something that specific as well. So you're exactly right. We foresee that it would be an interactive experience in some ways in order to get to these different dimensions. And then what the fun stuff is that we haven't even touched on? It's not even giving them the answer. It's eventually allowing them to run simulations. Well, what if it was 74 degrees?
Yeah.
What if it was 75 degrees? What would have changed? What if we added hamburgers into the product mix? What information do you have, that would have shown a bigger attach rate, based on that? Should we offer soups, if it's, below 50 degrees as well, which feels like a strange adjacency, but at least then we're still relevant, in colder months and climates and things of that sort as well. And that would come outside the organization. If you think about what needs to be in a knowledge cloud, it's what I call the four Ps. It's public information you trust from academic institutions and government institutions. It's published information that you're licensing in, things like analyst reports and things like that require discrete named user access in the organization. It's not a free for all of copyrighted content. The third is proprietary knowledge that are the crown jewels that define your organization in terms of who you are. And then the fourth is personal content. That's for your eyes and ears only. It could be sensitive HR information, things of that sort, employment agreements, or what have you. So these four Ps, when they get blended together in this AI maelstrom, become process knowledge, the fifth P.
Yeah, it's very interesting because what you just said, it's triggered a thought in my mind that, when you think about models, they kind of fall in two different spectrums of what humans are now expecting of them. On one end, it has to be accurate. And on the other end, they're also using it for creativity. Now, when a model hallucinates and we like what it creates, it's creativity. And when we don't like it, we say it's hallucinating. So from that perspective, I see that there are some models that are leaning towards more deterministic, accurate, and the other ones leaning towards more creative, like exploration. And hopefully somewhere in that spectrum, we then start to see new discoveries that we haven't seen these models do. But I want to touch on the last topic before we get into quick lightning round. My master's thesis was on this
Would it?
topic called multi-agent software engineering. And we were thinking about, my professor and I, we were thinking about, we have gone in software engineering from modular programming to object oriented eventually.
Right.
That's where Java packages came in. But what if these were all agents, like individual applications that are running on their own? This was pre microservices and
Really?
everything. And they were engaging with each other through API calls or just function calling. And today, now, we are in a world of agents, which is similar but very different. You mentioned that Pryon is also agentic. In your mind, how do you define an agent? What is the anatomy of an agent in your mind?
Yeah, I'm working backwards from an end goal, right? Because you can't have a discussion about agents without thinking about how to govern them as well,
Sure.
right? Because these things could be set loose like gremlins in your organization as well, right? For those of you that have seen the film, the '80s film. Um, in order to try to prevent that, I tell people one of the things that you may want to wrap your mind around is the concept of digital twins, and essentially connecting agents to individual human beings in your organization and giving them commensurate access controls to that individual that would be using the tool. Right? By doing so, it's a lot easier to govern what their authorities are, because the same authority that a human being has on whether approving a loan or not should be the same authorities that are given to the agent that's being tasked on figuring out whether somebody should be approving a loan or not. That's a way of essentially coupling to things that are more human scale, right? Because think about it this way: humans don't trust technology. Humans trust other humans, and if a corporation could be a human, considered a human in the case of law, then maybe the way to govern AIs and regulate them and things of that sort is to essentially say you cannot have a piece of software that's independently operating. If AI, in its most basic sense, when you and I, get asked what does AI do, it's mimicking what a human can do at scale. So if that's true, then you should not be deploying a piece of software in your organization that's not mimicking what a person would normally be doing as well. And as a function of it, maybe start thinking about governing it with the same authorities as the human that would have been manually doing that job as well. And
Yeah, and
a
with
lot easier
this,
to think about it then.
yeah, and with the same guardrails too. So I
Wasn't
think
it?
that's a very interesting concept. Although I do feel like you're headed in the right direction in the sense that we want a co-pilot that's a digital twin. But if you unpack the digital twin part, that means that co-pilot or my twin needs to have the same context, the same
Right?
information I have, but probably fewer authorities on what it can do. And to manage that vast corpus of real-time data coming in and existing information and then combining it or contextualizing is where I'm really excited about where this agentic technology goes towards. But this has been a phenomenal conversation, Igor. I'd really like how you're thinking about this and what your company is doing. So we do a quick lightning round with a couple of quick questions.
Right.
What is your favorite AI tool that you use every day today?
My favorite AI tool, and I know this is going to sound self-serving, and I hate to sound like a commercial for myself, but I really do use our portal, every day. I mean, literally every day. I mean, it's and think about another reason for the origin of this. I had 2 or 3 thousand Kindle books, and I looked, that I curated, but I never had time to read, the vast majority of them as well. And so, 7 years ago, I said, well, why can't I just have the AI read them all? My digital twin, read them all, and then I would converse with my digital twin in terms of the interesting things that it learned until I was able to find time to linearly read these things, to some future fantasy of retiring or things of that sort as well. So in my Pryon, so similar to the Capital One commercial, what's in your wallet? So what's in my Pryon? I have one for my home that has, the owner's manual of, systems that we have for water treatment, my car, washer dryers, coffee machines, and things of that sort. So unlike what many of you have, which is some drawer in the kitchen inevitably that has all the little owner's manuals in there as well, I can just talk to the thing and it'll help me figure out how to turn on night vision on the car, or how to pop the hood, or how to do the descaling procedure and things of that sort. So for me, I mean, you can see how I'm glowing, in some ways. It's literally my favorite thing. It's not ChatGPT. I mean, of course, Alexa, I use that every day, setting alarm clocks, turning lights on, and checking weather and things of that sort, which is what Amazon has to do, is adapt it towards other uses as well. The reason why they chose the word Alexa, like I said, it's a coincidence that it's my sister's name, was that, it reminded people of the Library of Alexandria. So I know that's their North Star as well. But for me, I knew that enterprises needed their own private version of that, right? That's the unification of all of their systems of record, because everybody needs to know something before they can do something. So the TAM for this, in the market that you and I operate, it's practically infinite, because while so many people put AI on a pedestal, they're forgetting that there's a latent drive in humanity towards collaboration from the get-go. People used to do cave drawings. People used to sit at fireplaces and describe tribal knowledge to each other, right? People created printing presses in universities and newspapers to do what? To communicate, these outcomes, to our communities so that everybody can make better decisions. That is what the purpose of a newspaper is. That's what the purpose is of an education, is so that we individually can make better decisions, to support, our way of life as well. And so a lot of times, I look at my own team and I say, you're not working for a tech company. In reality, what all of you that are listening to this program do for a living is you preserve life in all of its forms. Human, animal, and plant life. That's what you're actually doing, because that's the rarest commodity in what? Our solar system, in our galaxy, in the universe. That is literally the scarcest commodity. It's not gold. It's not diamonds. It's not any sort of critical minerals or things of that sort. That literally is this scarcest commodity. And if you think about all of the clients and partners that you serve as well, you can draw conclusions as well that's exactly what they're doing as well in their initiatives as well. That gives us a mission orientation that allows us to do exactly as you said in the earlier part of this call, to have that attention to detail, to ensure that all the braids are folded correctly.
Yeah, everything that you're saying is sparking a few things that I've been thinking about. Like, I like the way that you're thinking about, this, whatever this is, and now Notebook LM and of course Perplexity, they're trying to do the same thing. But it reminds me, I'm a big fan of the Foundation series by Isaac Asimov, and now Apple created, a completely different version of it. But the idea of a cube, which has all the knowledge, like a single place for all your knowledge that you can converse with and learn from, and then, it learns from you as well. And it's a simplistic view of it. And the second thing that you said was, you're preserving knowledge. To me, that reminds me of something else from another science fiction called The Westworld, where I think there was somebody who mentions that you live as long as you're remembered. And that applies to all knowledge as well. And that goes back to the Foundation series. So there's a lot of intertwining of philosophies with the sciences of what we are doing with models, which is incredibly fascinating. But on to the second question. What does your typical day look like? Like, how would you call something a productive day?
Yeah, well, many people listening to this are probably in similar circumstances. I'm traveling quite a bit, all over the places, meeting, clients, partners, investors, and things of that sort. So a typical day for me is on the road. This is one of the rare moments that we were able to spend some quality time together while I was able to be at home. But I'm usually, 4 to 6 flights deep every week, going to
Wow.
different cities and states and things of that sort. I typically anchor them in some sort of, talk or discussion that I'm hosting. And then that's an excuse for me to not be a homebody and get out there into the world and take customer briefings, partner briefings, and things of that sort. It's essentially following Jamie Dimon's advice, where he says that us as business leaders need to go out there and capture as many signals as possible in order to change the future fortunes of our respective organizations. And I will tell you, that means talking to 5-year-olds and 95-year-olds, not even just folks that are in tech, not just folks that are in, critical infrastructure or fancy pants industries. It's literally conversing with everybody in terms of what they like about, ChatGPT, what they wish, it did. What do they like about Alexa? What do they dislike about Siri? One after the other. How would they think the Google experience is going to adapt itself? What's the future of speech recognition? How do they consume content? How do they look up certain information in order to know what to answer me? Whether they're checking us into hotels or driving cars and things of that sort as well. So I think it's having that latent curiosity for me. But there's, I hate to say this, there's not a typical day other than, probably answering, 10,000 emails like all of you and endless LinkedIn messages and endless, texts that are coming in through the day and feeling like you're General Zod stuck in the phantom zone of, when he was floating in outer space in this 2D Zoom and Teams world that we find ourselves when we're in one place. But it's really getting out there because for me, remember I said the vertical integration that includes a user experience. You have to finish AI off by caring about the user experience. It can't just be middleware because eventually the last mile is that it has to communicate something to a real person. And so I've hired and worked with anthropologists and behavioral scientists. I hired product managers from Google, user experience folks from Apple, because I knew that we helped create the consumer AI industry, and we wanted to leverage the existing muscle memory that people already had at home as in their workplace. And I warn people, even when I meet military officers, that they are commanding the first generation of AI native recruits that are coming in because they have been using Siri on their phones and iPads and iPod touches. They are using Alexa in their kitchens and their bedrooms and things of that sort. And now you're sitting them in front of these user experiences that are selectors and form-based and things of that sort. That's not how they're used to thinking now. They're used to thinking in sub-second response time, getting all the information that they need. And you best take advantage of that in order to, support their decisions, give them decision advantage, and eventually decision dominance. So I'm very excited about what's been happening, but it is a little bit surreal. AI has been a carnival for the last couple of years versus the dozen people that used to show up at research conferences. Now it's like 5,000 people deep, and I kind of miss the punk rock days, I have to say.
But yeah, what a time to be alive. Last question, Igor. If you were to make one prediction about voice recognition or speech related to AI, what would that be, given your experience and background?
That's a fantastic question, and I will surprise you with this answer. The future of speech recognition is you not saying anything.
Wow.
You literally not saying anything, because then you speaking into a system will be considered an exception. Because as you just said, what is the future is these agentic workflows. And so why do I need to say anything when it knows when I need a glass of water? It knows when it should schedule the dentist. It knows that I'm better at 4 p.m. than I am at 9 a.m. for a key client or partner meeting as well. It knows how to sequence, right? The traveling salesman, literally and figuratively, how to sequence all my travel. It will interact with your calendar. It would say, hey, are we going to end up meeting at Davos this year or not? Let's kind of figure it out in neutral place and schedule all these things as well. No, it'll end up being an exception. It'll know what food to order for me as well. It'll be taking sensors, right? These biosensors and things of that sort to know, hey, product mix wise, he needs to eat more fruit this week. Nope, more vegetables. Hey, you know what? He's kind of low on carbs. Hey, he's, vitamin D deficient right now. I'm going to change the shades and things of that sort in order to accommodate that. I'm actually going to, request this room at the hotel because it's going to have more sun exposure versus this other side of the hotel that is looking inward into the courtyard as well. All of this stuff will just happen automatically for us. The flight will get booked. The Uber will automatically show up at the exact time. It will set the alarm exactly. It will change the alarm based on a traffic accident that happened on the interstate on the way in there in order to buffer an extra 20 minutes of time. All this stuff that we do as humans, and we don't realize all these microaggressions will all be soothed and solved. And that's
or
what's waiting for us.
or gets aggravated because I'm watching a movie called Atlas. I usually watch a movie over a period of 4 or 5 days, and this concept exists there too. They call it the Neuralink, as compared to what Elon is building with Neuralink, and then it self learns so that it starts talking like their digital twin, and this person is always very sarcastic and curses and now they two are engaging in a conversation that's really fascinating to see. But thank you so much, Igor. This was an amazing conversation. um, and thank you for what you keep doing, and looking forward to seeing what more Pryon can do.
No, I appreciate your hosting me today and a wonderful exploration, sharing this quality time with you. Thank you so much.